Hey everybody, Nick here. Before we start our service, a couple things to let you know about. As you would have just seen in all the announcements that just passed, we are in the midst of our homecoming plans. That is our plan to phase back in some in-person programs, services, and events. And we are so excited for this, but we're also wanting to make sure that we do this right. That we do this ethically, that we do this faithfully, that we do it safely, and we do it with joy. And so as we figure all this stuff out, we're going to go slow. We're going to change things and adjust and tweak things as we go to make sure that we're doing it in a way that makes you feel safe, in a way that we can make sure we're practicing our faith that says we need to love our neighbors and protect the most vulnerable. And we need to do it in a way that helps us be the kind of church that God is calling us to be. And so as we phase it all back in and figure out what that looks like, we're asking for your patience. We're asking for your courage. We're asking for you to come with us and help us figure out what this looks like together. Because the truth is, the beautiful thing is, this is such a huge, amazing opportunity for us to be the best church that we can be. To bring in the things that we love and we miss, to leave behind the things that just drained us and made us exhausted, and to try new and amazing things in some new ways and see where it takes us. And so I would love for all of you to join us as we begin our homecoming. Whether you join us in person or online, there is room for all of you, and we need all of you to help us do this, to make it work and be the best church that we can be. And so if you're going to join us on the 19th, that's next Sunday, for our in-person service, the link is below for you to go and sign up. You can find all our COVID protocols and protections right there. You need to do that in order to show up for the service. And a quick word to all of you who are going to stay online. And maybe that's you who live in a different part of the world. Maybe that's you who, you don't feel quite safe yet. You don't feel ready yet to join us in person. Or maybe you're like, hey, you know what? I love watching church on Wednesdays. That's my Sabbath. That's my holy day. And Sunday morning, it's just too bonkers for me to do in-person church anymore. I kind of like having that to myself or to my family. Know that we see you. Know that we hear you, and know that we will not leave you behind as we transition into whatever is next. We're going to commit to being a hybrid church. That's a church that exists online and in person. The rub is, we don't know really what that looks like yet. We're still trying to figure that out. With all our limitations and all our capacities and all our dreams, we're still in the midst of trying to figure out, how do we do that? What does hybrid look like for us? And so the rub is going to be, we might not have the kind of online service that you're used to in the next couple weeks as we try to figure it all out. But I want to promise you this, and know that I mean this from the very bottom of my heart. We're not leaving you behind. We will not forget about you. We want you to feel like you are welcome, wanted, and accepted, and you are valued and a huge part of our community. And so we are asking for your patience. We're asking for your ideas. We're asking for you to come along with us as we figure out how to be a church that is both in person and online. So stay tuned for some more details, and please, again, be patient as we figure it all out, because what we're cooking up is going to be amazing. It's going to be beautiful, and we want you to be a part of it. So whether we see you online or in person next week or in the weeks to come, I'm excited for it. Come and join us, and let's be the church together. But let's have our Sunday service. Hey friends, welcome to a Sunday service with Red Deer Lake United Church. My name is Nick, I am the minister here, and we are an affirming church that gratefully gathers on Treaty 7 land here in Calgary, and what we are all about is finding in the way of Jesus a new way to be human and alive in this world. A way connected to God, each other, and ourselves, this way of life that's rooted in those life-giving and sacred things like hope, joy, peace, love, justice, community, wonder, compassion, awe, those things that transform us into the kinds of people that God calls us to be. People who go out and transform the world, turning it into one where everybody has enough and everyone has a place. Yeah, that is who we are. That is what we are all about. And this is our Sunday service. This is a thing that we do each and every week that helps us become those kinds of people, that keeps us rooted in that life. This thing we do that reminds us of sacred and beautiful truths. This thing that lets us into a community where we can be seen and heard and feel like we belong. This thing we do that lets our bodies catch up with our spirit. This thing we do that keeps us going in the right direction, that leads us deeper into life, that lets us know that we are loved and that we are enough just as we are. Yeah, that's what a Sunday service is. That's what we are about to do. And whoever you are, wherever you come from, whatever your story is, whatever you're bringing in with you, know this. You're welcome, wanted, and accepted here. Yeah, you're welcome, wanted, and accepted. All of you and all of you belong in this place. There's room for you here, and we are so stoked, so excited that you're joining us today. So as we get started, I invite you to take a moment to check in on your computer. There should be on this side right here, a little dialog box, a chat box. You might need to make your screen bigger or smaller to see it. Smaller, not bigger. Make it smaller to see it. And check in. Let us know who you are. Let us know where you come from. Let us know how you are doing. We would love to connect with you right now on there and throughout the rest of the service. That is a way that we can feel seen and heard. We practice that affirming community that we strive to be. And so keep that up. But we're going to start with this. We're going to start with a poem and then a time to set our intentions. Because that's the thing, right? This isn't just a thing we do. This is a really beautiful and powerful and transformative thing that we do. And so we should show up with an intention, with something that we want to get out of this. We should show up in a way that is open, that is soft, with a bit of purpose. And so we're going to listen to a piece of poetry by Gregory Orr that reminds us of that gets us ready to choose our intention and show up in the way that we need to show up. And so this time is for you. It's a time for you to finish arriving, to choose to be here knowing that this is a good place to be, in that God, that ground of our being, that source of life, that extravagant and indiscriminate love is with us and around us, making all things new. And so once again, my friends, it is so good to be with you. It is so good to have you here as we begin our service. May peace be with you.
This is what was bequeathed us. This earth the beloved left, and leaving, left to us. No other world but this one. Willows and the river and the factory with its black smokestacks. No other shore, only this bank on which the living gather. No meaning but what we find here. No purpose but what we make. That and the beloved's clear instructions. Turn me into song, sing me awake.
So, one of the things that we do each and every week is we try to root ourselves in this life that Jesus opens up for us, this life connected to God, each other, and ourselves, is this thing we call grace and renewal. It's a time for us to practice spiritual practices. These things that we can do each and every day, each and every moment, really, that root us in that life, that remind us of our worth, that remind us of bits of wisdom, these things that can help us be full of worth and value, that can help us take up space. These things that strengthen our connection to God, each other, and ourselves, and keep on going, becoming more and more and more human. Now, each and every week we try to mix it up because we think it's important to have a huge toolkit of these practices that we can use on any occasion. And this one today is going to be a mantra. And we've experienced these ones before. Mantras are these things that we can repeat to ourselves. Sometimes in the morning as we get ready for our day, sometimes at bed as we get ready to go to sleep, or in certain moments when we feel anxiety begin to rise, when we feel ourselves getting thin, and we can use these mantras to relax, to breathe, to gain some grounding as we head into some difficult things. And today's mantra is going to be one that we can use really on any occasion, but maybe especially after we've had a tough day. I'm talking about the kinds of days where maybe we've made some mistakes and we've learned some tough things. We're like, oh, that was such a hard day. I had to rumble with some hard truths. You know the kind of days I'm talking about? Yeah, we all have those days. We know what I'm talking about. And this mantra is used to help us not just dismiss those hard lessons and move beyond them because they're just so hard for us to hold on to and let sink in. And this mantra is one that can help us honor them, that can help us listen to them and be grateful for them. So as we head into this mantra, I invite you to think of what's a hard lesson that you've learned? Let's pick one that's recent or one that you're still rumbling with. What's a teaching, a lesson, a bit of wisdom that you're like, oh, I don't want to let that one sink in because it's too painful. It's too hard and you just keep pushing it away. What's one of yours? And instead of pushing it away, what this mantra is going to do is bring it in. And we're going to be grateful for it. Because we know when we practice gratitude, that opens us up. That helps us embrace things, accept things, and integrate things, and become whole. And so I invite you to either listen to this mantra or ideally join in saying it with me. And let's let that hard lesson that we know we need but we don't want sink in and become a part of who we are. So as we begin this grace and renewal, may the grace of Christ be with you. And so as we begin our spiritual practice, let that lesson again come to mind. That hard teaching that you've encountered that you would rather just not learn from, that you would rather keep at an arm's distance away. That's just too hard and icky to embrace. And invite you to do the hard and courageous work of pulling it in, of embracing it, of holding it, however uncomfortable it is. And repeat this mantra with me. I am thankful for this lesson. 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 I'm thankful for this lesson. I am thankful for this lesson. How's that feel? If it still feels awkward and uncomfortable, that's okay. Usually, most of the time, these mantras need to be used more than once. But this practice of gratitude is something that you can use whenever you want to push it away. And what it does is draw it in, and through being grateful for it, we open up. And we let it go to work, helping us learn, helping us grow, helping us become better, knowing that is what it's all about. And it's worth the pain, it's worth the struggle, because growth is where it begins and ends. And so may you use this mantra whenever you need it. May you practice this gratitude whenever you need it. And may it help you grow and learn the hard lessons that help us become the kinds of people that God calls us to be. And so once again, we end with our mantra. I am thankful for this lesson. I am thankful for this lesson. I am thankful for this lesson. Amen. When they came back down the mountain to the other disciples, they saw a huge crowd gathered around them, and the religion scholars cross-examining them. As soon as the people in the crowd saw Jesus, admiring excitement stirred them. They ran and greeted him. He asked, "What's going on? What's all the commotion?" A man out of the crowd answered, "Teacher, I brought my mute son, made speechless by a demon, to you. Whenever it seizes him, it throws him on the ground. He foams at the mouth, grinds his teeth, and goes stiff as a board. I told your disciples, hoping they could deliver him, but they couldn't." Jesus said, "What a generation! No sense of God. How many times do I have to go over these things? How much longer do I have to put up with this? Bring the boy here." They brought him. When the demon saw Jesus, it threw the boy into a seizure, calling him to writhe on the ground and foam at the mouth. He asked the boy's father, "How long has this been going on?" "Ever since he was a little boy. Many times it pitches him into the fire or the river to do away with him. If you can do anything, do it. Have a heart and help us. Jesus said, if? There are no ifs among believers. Anything can happen. No sooner were the words out of his mouth than the Father cried, I believe. Help me with my unbelief. Seeing the crowd that was forming fast, Jesus gave the vile spirit its marching orders. Dumb and deaf spirit, I command you out of him and stay out. Screaming, and with much thrashing about, it left. The boy was as pale as a corpse, so the people started saying, he's dead. But Jesus, taking his hand, raised him. The boy stood up. After arriving back home, his disciples cornered Jesus and asked, why couldn't we throw the demon out? He answered, there's no way to get rid of this kind of demon except by prayer. Hear what the Spirit is saying to the church. God be with you. So if you are just tuning in for the first time, or maybe a church is still relatively new to you and you're still kind of figuring out what it is that we're doing here, one of the things that we do each and every week is we pick out a story from the Bible and we explore it together. And now we don't do this because we think the Bible is literally the Word of God. It's not. And we don't do this because we think that the Bible is the only way that God speaks to us. It's not. And we don't do this because we think the Bible is like a life manual of sorts and we can find all the answers to all our questions within it. It's not, and it doesn't. The reason we do this, the reason we come back to this thing every single week, the reason really why we call it holy, is that something special happens. Something almost magical happens every single time we read these stories. There's something that happens that people have been experiencing for thousands of years. When we read these stories, we open this thing up, we discover truths. We discover bits of wisdom. We find out these lessons that help us learn how to be human, how to live a life that's connected with God, each other, and ourselves. And that's why we keep coming back to these things week after week after week. And the super cool thing is, because you think that would get kind of repetitive, like, oh man, we've read the whole thing, we've spent so many weeks on this, right? But the cool thing is, and maybe you've experienced this yourself, even when you come back to the same stories, they're new, they're different. Maybe you experience something that you've never experienced before. Maybe there's a part of the story that you never noticed. Or maybe because you're a new person, that you're in a different place than the last time you read it, the whole story shifts ever so slightly, or maybe completely, and a whole new world opens up. Yeah, anyone know what I'm talking about? That ever happened to any of you? Yeah, that's why we do this. That's why we come back again and again and again, because there's this endless supply of wisdom and questions and truths that get opened up for us when we engage it. That's why we say the Bible is alive. It's full of the Spirit, because it's always this ongoing conversation. And when it comes to the story that we just heard, that story from Mark, there are all kinds of places we could go with it. There's so many things that could open up a new world for us. And we've already talked about a bunch of them already. We've talked about what we can do with miracles. We've talked about how to hold healings. We've talked about how to hear those stories where someone is possessed by a demon or an evil spirit. We've talked about all of that. And the place I want to pull y'all into this week is a line that we so often miss because we get caught up in the other bigger, more shocking, more scandalous parts of the story, like the demon. And it's a line that's right smack in the middle of the story. It's almost a throwaway line. And it's that line that comes after Jesus tells the dad that in order for his son to be healed, he needs to believe. And the dad says to Jesus, I believe, help my unbelief. I believe, help my unbelief. And I love this line. I love this line because, well, which is it? Do you believe or do you not believe? Do you have belief or do you have unbelief? Because you can't have both, which is how we see it, right? That's how we would break it down today. It's a dichotomy, a dualism. It's got to be one or the other. You either have belief or you don't. You can't have belief and then ask for help with your unbelief. It doesn't work that way. And that's why this line sticks out to me. It doesn't make any sense. And it's here. It's here we need to remember this little spirituality Bible type hack. If you're ever reading the Bible, or if you're ever kind of engaging with a bit of sacred wisdom and something you hear doesn't make any sense, instead of dismissing it, that's your cue to pay attention. Yeah, if it feels weird, if it's out of the ordinary, if it's strange, and especially if it's offensive, that's our cue to pull over and start listening and do that sacred work of rumbling with it. And we're going to do that with this line. I believe, help me with my unbelief. We're going to pull over here and pay attention because I think this story is trying to offer us something, especially for those of us who are trying to be the spiritual beings that we are. When it comes to belief and unbelief, it's never one or the other. It's always both. It's always both. Belief and unbelief exist together. You're always going to be experiencing both. Because this is the tension that we live in. As spiritual beings, we'll live somewhere in between belief and unbelief. Which I gotta say is really comforting. It's kind of liberating, isn't it? It's kind of liberating to hear that faith and spirituality isn't a static thing. It's not something that we can kind of set up camp and remain within. But it's way more dynamic. It's way more fluid. There's so much more movement in it. Because the truth is, there will be times of belief and there will be times of unbelief. There will be moments of faith and moments of doubt. Sometimes you'll be over here and other times you'll be over here, and sometimes you'll be somewhere in the middle, and sometimes, and maybe all the time, you're all of it at once. Right? Anyone know what I'm talking about? Anyone ever experienced that? Yeah. That's the truth of this life that we're trying to create. That it's never one or the other. It's always going to be both. It's always belief and unbelief. And maybe you need to hear that right now. Maybe you're struggling with some shame about not living always over here. And the good news is that, hey, you don't always live over there. Sometimes you're over here, sometimes you're here, here, and sometimes you're all of it at once. Yeah, that's just the nature about belief, is it's a spectrum, and that's the tension that we live in. And now when we talk about belief, especially when we talk about belief in the church, we're not so much talking about whether or not you believe X, Y, and Z. We're not so much talking about ascending to intellectual concepts like whether or not God exists, or if Jesus is divine, or whatever else. We're more venturing into truth territory when we talk about that. But belief is something different altogether. Belief is something that happens less up here and happens more in here. You with me? Yeah, belief's in here. Because when we talk about belief, we're talking more disposition than position. We're talking about being open to something bigger than yourself, to a reality underneath and behind this one, to a plane of existence that we're not always aware of, to a way of being that's different from anything else. When we talk about belief, we're talking about the practice of saying yes to things we can't see or know. Yeah, that's what we talk about when we talk about belief. Are you with me? Anyone know what I'm talking about? Yeah, this is what Alan Watts was getting at when he wrote that to have faith is to trust yourself to the water. When you swim, you don't grab a hold of the water, because if you do, you will sink and drown. Instead, you relax and float. Yeah, I love that. That's so good. And the philosopher Dallas Willard, he would put it this way. He would say, we believe something when we act as if it were true. Yes, there is a line for us right there. We believe something when we act as if it were true. Yeah, man, that's belief. That is belief. To believe is to be open. It's to dare, to hope, to risk, to see, to bend, to trust, to resist, to be willing, and to be moved. Yeah. And we know this. We know this belief when our relationships go sideways and we lean into our hope that reconciliation is possible. That's belief. When we see humanity just fall apart and resort to hate and violence and we refuse to join in, that's belief. When we allow ourselves to try new things and get curious and move out of our boxes, that's belief. When we resist the things that tell us that we are not worthy and that we are not enough, that's belief. That's belief. This is what Jesus talks about when he talks about belief. It's the daring and radical disposition and practice of saying yes to things we can't see and can't know. Yeah, that's what we talk about when we talk about belief. And if that's what belief is, the other side, unbelief, it kind of gets filled in, doesn't it? When we talk about unbelief, we're talking about the disposition of saying no, of being closed, of being fearful or unwilling. We're talking scarcity. We're talking playing it safe, of staying comfortable and being complicit and apathetic. Yeah, that's what unbelief is. The biblical scholar Chad Myers, he would put it this way. He would say that belief is the despair dictated by the dominant powers that nothing can really change. A despair that renders revolutionary vision and practice impotent. That's so good. Let's read that one again. Unbelief is the despair dictated by the dominant powers that nothing can really change. A despair that renders revolutionary vision and practice impotent. Yeah, that's unbelief. It's giving in to resignation. It's losing imagination. It's thinking to everything that tells us lies. Well, maybe they're right. Maybe that is true. Maybe there is nothing different. Yeah. And we know unbelief too, don't we? We've all been to this side of the spectrum. We've all found ourselves there. Yeah, that's the tension we live in, just like that dad. And the disciples, they were there too. The reason they couldn't heal the kid is because they didn't believe they could. They'd given up hope. They told themselves no, they gave up. They resigned to the fact that that kid was just going to be this way. And I mean, if that's the case, of course they couldn't do it, right? Of course they couldn't. We know how powerful our mindsets are, our attitudes, and our perspectives are. We know how quickly our no can shut us down. We know how fast that will stop us in our tracks. We know we can't do anything if we're convinced we can't. Right? We know that. And again, this is why this story is so sacred. This is why this story is our story. Because we've been there. It's a story about us. We've all been that dad. We've all been those disciples. We've all been people who are caught up in our unbelief. We know the power of being shut down, closed off, and saying no. Right? Yeah. Whether it's with our faith, our relationships, our parenting, our dreams, our self-worth, our work, or whatever, we know how crippling and how overwhelming unbelief is. And the story isn't just sacred because it takes away the shame by naming all of that and kind of letting us know it's a universal experience, but it's also sacred because Jesus gives us a way out of it. He gives us a way to deal with our unbelief and move back towards belief. He gives us this way to live in the middle of that tension. And it's right there at the very, very end of that story. Prayer, he says, is the way to get us out of that unbelief and help us live well within the tension. Prayer. Prayer is the way out of it all. And now I should tell you, I should be upfront and transparent that I've got a complicated relationship with prayer. And the more I think about it, it goes all the way back to my childhood, because I grew up thinking that prayer was a song we sang God at supper time. Or that prayer was this kind of insurance policy that we would say at bedtime because if I die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take. Which is such a wonderful thought to give a child before he goes to sleep. It was this way of telling me that, I could die when I sleep. And if I don't say this prayer, well, God's going to be like, sorry, kid, you don't qualify. Right? Yeah. That's what that prayer makes kids think. And then later on in my life, prayer became this thing we did when we needed something. We would bow our heads, we'd close our eyes, and we would ask God for stuff. Which is a beautiful way to lament and let out everything inside of us. But what that way of praying taught me was that God isn't the kind of God that I was told about in Sunday school. Because every single week we would pray for stuff at church, and every single week people still died. Suffering still happened, the world still burned. And then the very next week we'd go on asking God for more stuff while still waiting on the stuff from the previous weeks. Yeah, complicated history with prayer. But as my theology evolved and my concept of God changed, as I experienced a God who isn't up there pulling the strings, but rather a God who is down here sustaining and encouraging, prayer began to change for me as well. Prayer became less about talking to a God up there and more about connecting with a God down here. It became this way of talking less about things I want to happen to others and more about things that I need to happen to me. It became this way to empty out all the stuff that takes up space within me so I could see what's left. I could see what is good and real and true. It became less about words and more about breath. It became less a way to ask for peace and more a way to find peace. And over the past 15 years, prayer has changed so much since I was a kid singing Johnny Appleseed at the supper table. And I think this story that we've got here today opens up a whole other dimension for what prayer could be. We see Jesus saying it's the way to deal with our unbelief and live well within that tension. It's a thing that we can do again and again and again to remain open, willing, and saying yes. And again, as Chad Myers would put it, he defines prayer this way. Prayer is the intensely personal struggle within each person and amongst us collectively to resist the despair and distractions that cause us to practice unbelief, to abandon or avoid the way of Jesus. And we'll read that again. Prayer is the intensely personal struggle within each person and amongst us collectively to resist the despair and distractions that cause us to practice unbelief, to abandon or avoid the way of Jesus. Yeah, prayer is what we do to stay within the tension. It's what we do when despair and defeat feel so overwhelming. It's what we do to remember our values and float in the water. It's what we need to do whenever we feel ourselves struggling and being pulled over to the wrong side. Which again which again is so liberating. It's not wrong side, because it's part of it. It belongs. So let's not even characterize it as wrong. That's bad. I shouldn't have said that. It's what we do when we feel ourselves being pulled over this way, when we need to be pulled over this way. Yeah, that's what prayer is. And it's so liberating, isn't it? Yeah, because it tells us that prayer isn't just one thing. It doesn't look just one way. It doesn't have to look the way that you were taught it does. But prayer is anything that we do to struggle well and practice belief. It's anything we do to struggle well and practice our belief. Maybe you go for a run when things get tough, and that's how you quiet the noise within you. That's prayer. Or maybe you turn on the music when you're driving home in traffic and you just sing it out. Yeah, that's prayer too. Or maybe you just do yoga. Or maybe you get quiet and still and just focus on your breath. That's prayer. Maybe you talk things out with your partner or some friends. That's prayer. Or maybe you bake. Maybe you paint. It's all prayer. It all belongs. It can be all counted as that. It's whatever you do to help you remember, to be open, to dare, to risk, to play, to dream, to imagine. It's all the things we have to do to stay within the tension and practice our belief. Yeah, that's what prayer is. And I don't know about you. But I think we need some prayer right now. Because there is too much pulling us towards unbelief these days. Anyone with me on that? Yeah. Yeah, it's not hard to feel despair and resignation when you look around us. It's not hard to feel defeated right now. I think a lot of us, and I'm talking mainly about myself here, I think a lot of us find ourselves on this end of that spectrum. And here's where we need to make a choice. If this is where we find ourselves, we have the choice. Do I want to stay here? Or do I need to pray? Do I need to do something to help bring me back into the middle of that tension towards my belief? To help me to open up, soften up, dare, risk, play a bit more, and be the kind of person that God calls us to be. Someone who, even if we don't fully know or see, says yes. Yeah. And so the question this story gives us is, how do you pray? What do you do to practice your belief? What do you do? What can you do to move from here over to here? The good news is there's no wrong answer. It can be anything. Anything that helps you open up and say yes. Anything that moves you into that tension and live well within it. And so, my friends, as we rumble with everything going on in us and around us, may you have the courage. May you have the courage to practice your belief and pray hard and struggle well. And as you do that, may grace and peace be with you.
Precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on, help me stand, I am tired, I am weak, I am worn, through the storm, through the night, lead me on to the light. and the day is past and done. At the river I stand, got my feet, hold my hand, take my hand. Precious Lord, lead me home, take my hand. Precious Lord, lead me home.
Lord, Lord, open unto me. Open unto me light for my darkness. Open unto me courage for my fear. Open unto me hope for my despair. Open unto me peace for my turmoil. Open unto me joy for my sorrow. Open unto me strength for my weakness. Open unto me wisdom for my confusion. Open unto me forgiveness for my sins. Open unto me tenderness for my toughness. Open unto me love for my hates. Open unto me thyself for myself. Lord, Lord, open unto me.
So my friends, that is everything for this week. Thank you so much for being here with us. It means the world to us that you show up and you do church together with us online. Just a reminder, next week, we're not meeting here. We are going to meet in person at our church building. All the details are below in the description. Make sure you go there to sign up and find out what our COVID protocols are, because we all need to do what we can to keep each other safe. If you are not joining us there, again, we'll see you back on here soon. Stay tuned for how we're going to do all of that, but it will not be long. We are going on Zoom in just a little bit. We're going to keep on these conversations. So go to the link below, click on that, and that will take you a time of being in community that you are all welcome to join us for. If you like these things, if you're like, man, my intention worked, I feel good, I need some more of this, we need some more of this in our world, I would love to ask you to support this work. Click the link below, that will take you to our donations page, and please give. Whether it is a one-time thing or a recurring gift of any amount, it doesn't matter, it all counts. It all helps us do more and more of this and keep people connected and full of hope, joy, peace, and love. So thank you for all of you who give. It is so, so, so appreciated. And check out everything else that's coming up. There is so much going on at our church as we phase things back in. We want all of you to be a part of it, whether you're here or online or here, however you want to break that down. More info is in the links in the description. But for now, my friends, whatever you're struggling with, whatever kind of defeat and despair you're rumbling with, however much you are towards unbelief, may you know that happens. May you know that's okay. May you know that's normal, that it all belongs. But may you do what you can to practice prayer and choose to say yes, choose to remain open and pull yourself back towards belief and be the kinds of people that God calls us to be. People who say no to hate and fear and yes to love and hope. People who live loudly and transform this place into the one that God calls it to be. A world where everyone has enough and everyone has a place. So may you go in peace, may you go in love, may you go and do it loudly. We love you, we miss you, grace and peace be with you. Amen.